Welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast, made for women who want their healthiest years to be ahead of them, not behind them. Join your host, Courtney Townley, right now as she breaks down the fairy tale health story you have been chasing all of your life into sensible action steps and lasting change. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast. This is your host, Courtney Townley. And as always, thank you so much for taking time out of what I'm sure is a busy schedule to be here and listen to this show. I do not take your listenership lightly, and I'm really honored that you're here. And today's conversation is probably one of my favorite things to talk about. This is a topic that is really, I feel, the meat and potatoes of the work that I teach. And I have a lot to say on this topic, which some of you who are longtime listeners are going to say, but Courtney, you have a lot to say on all topics, which I'm not going to lie is true. But this truly is one of my favorite things to talk about. So before we go there, in case you are new to the show or you did not listen to the first episode in this series, I decided to dedicate this entire month to the conversation of the practice of realignment. What is the practice of realignment? Well, life is going to throw you a lot of curveballs, things that you didn't see coming. So whether that's illness or a death in the family or having to move across country or something like COVID. And when those things come into our arena, it's disorienting. And we get misaligned. We get off track with the things that we know help us to feel grounded, capable, and strong. And you are, again, going to be presented with many, many opportunities over the course of your life to get misaligned, because that's just life. But my hope is that you fiercely commit and develop a strong practice of realignment. So successful people, it's not that they don't get misaligned all the time, they do, but they're very quick to realign themselves. And realignment is a practice. It's something that we just keep doing time and time again. And the more committed we become and the more we practice, the easier it gets. And this topic, of course, is always relevant, but especially relevant right now, because I have been having conversation after conversation with women who are feeling so disoriented by everything that's happened over the past 5 months. Routines have been disrupted. Our day-to-day life looks radically different than it did just 5 months ago. And I just know that a lot of women are feeling frustrated and very misaligned with how they want to be showing up in the world. And so this series is my effort to help give you some encouragement and give you some advice on how you can realign yourself with more ease and grace. Now, the first episode of this podcast dropped 2 weeks ago. And if you haven't listened to it and you enjoy what you hear today, go back and listen to it. Do yourself the favor. In that episode, I talked about what I think are 2 of the most powerful initial steps a person can take to help get themselves realigned. The first step, I talked about asking yourself some really good questions. And the reason I suggest starting by asking yourself some really good questions, like, what does misalignment look like right now? How do I know that I'm misaligned? What's it going to take for me to get realigned? Am I willing to do that work? What are going to be some of the obstacles to doing that work? How can I work through those obstacles? And the reason I think good questions are such an important starting place is because the answers give you clarity. And clarity, I have long said, is the mother of discipline. Clarity is what gets us to show up because we know exactly where we are, we know exactly where we want to go, and we know exactly what needs to get done in order to travel the gap between the two. So start your realignment process by asking yourself some really good questions to get clear. The second thing I suggested is to start leaning in to chemically realigning yourself. And chemical realignment is really what the health industry, I believe, the health and wellness industry is so big on talking about, right? And rightly so. Our chemistry, of course, massively influences our biology and our psychology. And while I do not believe it is the most important work of your life, it is very hard to do the most important work of your life when you're feeling chemically disrupted, when you're not feeling well, you're super tired, you're not eating well, and so your chemistry is all over the place, your hormones are unbalanced, and you tend to react rather than take more of a proactive stance about your life. So taking some time to realign your behavior to support your chemistry is really important. And just to kind of give you some deeper help on that specific topic, I have a 5-part video series I've talked about many times on this podcast. It's called 5 to Thrive, and it's been around for a few years. If you're someone who's registered for it before, it doesn't mean that you can't go back and rework the content of those videos. In fact, that's exactly why I created them, because the practice of realigning our chemistry is not a one-time thing. It's a thing that we have to redo over and over and over again because, like I said earlier, life is going to throw a lot of curveballs. And so if you've registered for that program, or if you haven't yet, I just want you to know that it's totally free. And it's a great starting place to recommit to the 5 basic elements that will help you to chemically rebalance yourself. You can register for that at graceandgrit.com/5 to thrive. And I'll offer you even another layer of free support. I have a Facebook group called the Women of Grace and Grit Facebook community. And over the course of the next 5 weeks, each week, we're tackling one of the 5 topics that I introduce in the 5 to Thrive video series. So I'm helping people to be accountable. I'm helping to just, get them to focus on one thing each week, digging a little deeper with one thing before moving on to the next. So if you need a little extra layer of support, join us inside that community. It's an awesome community, and I think you'll get a lot of value, not just in realignment, but in so much more moving forward. Now, I said earlier that the chemical realignment conversation is not the real conversation that I'm most interested in as a health coach. And really, I don't even know if I identify with the term health coach. I've said this before. Yes, I have helped many women over the course of a 20-year career to dramatically improve their health. But the longer I'm in the space of women's health, the more I am interested in not just helping a woman improve the health of her body, but help her improve the health of her life. And so I kind of identify more as a personal development coach than anything. And of course, balancing chemistry is one of the foundational elements of that. So it's absolutely work that I address. I know a lot about exercise and nutrition, and I've been in that space for a very long time. But the conversation that I want to have with women is so much deeper. And maybe to give you a visual on this, I created a little social media image to share with my community last week. And I think it really resonated with people. And if you can just imagine for a second, probably everyone listening to this has seen that meme of success, which is the iceberg, right? And the tip of the iceberg that we see outside of the water is what everybody sees. They just see the success. They see that you're making money, or they see that you're really fit, or that you have a really happy family. But what they don't see is the large majority of the iceberg that's under the water, which is all the obstacles you had to overcome, and the challenges and the setbacks and the grit that you had to apply and the self-doubt that you had, right? So success, what we see, is just the tip of the iceberg. What it really takes to create success is so much bigger. And this is really the image that I love to use to explain health, That the conversation that we're really conditioned to focus on is the tip of the iceberg, which is the diet and the exercise and getting enough sleep. It's basically the elements of chemical realignment. But what allows you to show up and engage with those things is so much more. It's things like self-respect and self-awareness and self-honesty, having trust in yourself, being compassionate with yourself, and feeling so confident in who you are that you lead yourself powerfully through your life in a way that feels very aligned with the type of person you want to be in the world. This is the conversation that I'm most interested in having. Because if you don't have these things that I just mentioned, the self-respect, self-awareness, self-trust, self-honesty, self-compassion, you're never going to show up with any degree of consistency to take care of yourself. You're not going to consistently exercise. You're not going to consistently eat nutrient-dense food. You're probably going to negotiate your way out of your bedtime all the time. So even though I think it's important when you're in a space of trying to realign to focus on the chemical rebalancing, that is not the end of the work, right? So we start realigning ourselves by asking good questions, getting our actions to realign with the things that help us to stabilize our chemistry. And the third piece, which I really want to talk about today, is really mending the relationship that you have with yourself. Because when we get misaligned, so often there are some serious challenges in the relationship that you have with yourself. And I think this will make a lot more sense at the end of the episode, so stick with me. But health, I have long said, I have said this in workshops and masterclasses and courses for years. Health is a relationship, and it is the most intimate, long-term relationship that you will ever be in. So to help you kind of think about this third element of realignment as mending your relationship with yourself, I want you to think for a moment about relationships in your life that get misaligned. So maybe it's your relationship with your significant other. Maybe it's your relationship with your kid or a really good friend or your parent. When those relationships get off kilter, why is it true? Like, why is that happening? Well, there's a lot of reasons, right? You stop making time. Maybe you're not listening to the other person, right? And you're just kind of dominating the conversations. It's all about you. Maybe you're not being honest in the relationship. Maybe you're not being very nice in the relationship, or the other person isn't being very nice. Or maybe you're not really taking responsibility for your part in the relationship. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can happen inside of relationships that create that misalignment. So I want to dive a little deeper into some of these. I don't have time in one podcast to cover all of them. But let's talk about some of the misalignments that happen with the relationship you have with yourself. So let's start with this piece of not making time for yourself. Ladies, I get it. Life is insane right now, right? A lot of us are trying to kind of work overtime because we're managing households in different ways, and then we're still trying to hold down careers. We're trying to support friends and families during a really kind of chaotic time. And so you have a lot on your plate. I see you. I hear that. And I want to remind you that you are going to show up for those people in those spaces and places in the most powerful way if you dedicate a little bit of the time in the day to you and only you. It doesn't have to be vast amounts of time. But when you stop spending time with yourself, by yourself, you get very disconnected from yourself. So right now, as you're in this space of trying to realign yourself, I want you to start to think about the time you spend with yourself as like a coffee date. I want you to start scheduling some coffee dates with yourself. And more specifically, I'm going to recommend 3 times a day. And like I said, this is not an epic period of time. We're talking 10 minutes. 10 minutes would be like the minimum. You can do more if you want, if you have it. But 10 minutes at the very beginning of your day, before you go out and try to save the world, 10 minutes with yourself to get your head on straight, to check in, ask for what you need, and really get the day started on the right foot. I would recommend taking another break somewhere in the middle of the day. Maybe it's after lunch, maybe it's somewhere in the mid-afternoon, but same thing. Just pausing for a few minutes. Maybe you go into the car, shut the door. Maybe you go into the bathroom and lock the door. But same thing. You're just checking in. How you doing? How you been? What's going on today? How can I support you better? How are you feeling? Really simple. Just like you would your best girlfriend or your husband when you haven't seen him in a long time. I'll tell you, my husband and I are like ships in the night. We are both self-employed. We have very busy businesses. And if we don't make dates with each other throughout the day, we won't see each other. So we kind of have a ritual in the morning of sitting on the couch together for a few minutes. You know, we sit in bed together at night before we go to sleep. And it helps to fortify our relationship. And that's exactly what I'm asking you to do with yourself. So the third break would be somewhere at the end of the day. And I love the end of the day check-in because you get to kind of reassess the day. How did I show up today? Do I like how I showed up today? What would I do differently tomorrow to make sure I show up in even a more powerful way? Right? Simple but powerful questions. So, my tip number 1 for this third piece of realignment, which is mending your relationship with yourself, is you gotta carve out some time for yourself. The second thing, which kind of goes hand in hand with this first one of making time for yourself, is you have to start listening to yourself. A lot of you are not listening. What you're doing is you're dictating. You're dictating your agenda to your body. You're not really communicating with it. You're not really asking for what it needs. You're not listening. You're just doing all the talking. And you have a whole lot of expectations. Can you imagine if someone in your life talked to you the way that you talk to yourself about your agenda and about your expectations? It probably would not go well. And a lot of you know what I'm talking about here. Right? You're telling your body that, if I get a good night's sleep tonight, I better feel amazing tomorrow. Versus, you know what? I owe it to my body to get, a good solid maybe 8 hours tonight. And if you wake up tomorrow and you still feel off kilter, there's more work for you to do in that relationship. But for you to expect that just because you put in a little bit of effort, that your body is supposed to radically turn around from months, years, or decades of neglect is insanity. Stop doing that. You're making it so much harder on yourself, and you're really pissing your body off probably even more by doing that. So this, I've done episodes on this. I did an episode just a month ago about the art of listening, or a few months ago. The truth is your body is always doing the best it can with the information that you're giving it. It's always your ally. And I know that's hard to accept, right? But think about it. When you have too much stress in your life and you're not doing anything to manage that stress, or maybe you are doing a couple things to manage the stress, but it's not enough. Your body is going to store fat in an effort to protect you, because all it knows is it's getting this message of high cortisol. And wow, there must be something really off kilter about her life right now. Maybe there's not enough food. Maybe she's being chased by something. It doesn't know specifically what the stressor is, but what the chemical messaging is telling the body is that there's something that is urgent, and we need to protect this person for future use. So your body's doing you a good thing. And let's just say that maybe you're someone who never fuels yourself well. Maybe you eat a lot of food, but you don't eat very nutrient-dense food, or you just never make time to eat because you're too busy. Well, even in that case, your body's your ally, right? Your body turns your thyroid function down and says, hey guys, we don't have enough fuel on board. We're not getting enough nutrition. So let's just not do our jobs as efficiently. Let's slow down production of energy and cellular reproduction and all the things so we can conserve this woman energy. And of course, the consequence of that is you feel sluggish. Your metabolic function declines. And you get pissed at your body when really your body is looking out for you. And if you don't make time to listen to your body and really pay attention to your life, you'll never identify these things. The other piece of listening is, we hear this word a lot, body awareness, right? That we have to be aware of our body in order to honor what it needs. And I got to tell you, a lot of people I work with are very disconnected from their bodies because they're all in their head, right? They think a lot about what their bodies should be doing, but they're not at all connecting with their physiology to ask what it needs, to get in there and see what's really going on. So a big part of self-awareness is having body awareness. And one of my favorite ways to encourage people to practice this is when you carve out that little bit of time for yourself in the day, when you have those coffee dates with yourself. One of my favorite ways to spend that time, at least the first couple minutes, is just doing a quick body scan. And all a body scan is closing your eyes and literally scanning your body from head to foot or foot to head, literally covering every inch of your body with your attention and just checking in. You're not judging. You're not trying to fix. You're just acknowledging. Are there any spaces and places that feel off kilter, right? What are the physical sensations that I'm feeling in my body right now? How am I feeling emotionally? Again, such simple questions. But when you bring attention to the answers of those questions, it's really easy to start honoring your body at a much higher level. So make time and start listening. These are usually not making time and not listening gets us incredibly disconnected from ourselves. And then we wonder why we're struggling. The third piece I want to address is getting very honest with yourself. You can't have a deep, intimate relationship with yourself if you're not being honest with yourself. And I don't think that most of us are intentionally being dishonest. It's just that we are sometimes intentionally avoiding the real story because we don't like what we think we're going to see. So it's easier to just not face it. And, that is kind of a way of lying to yourself. I don't think you're lying intentionally, but you're also not intentionally being honest with yourself. And without honesty, you can never expect to optimize health. And I have said this for a really long time. I apologize if a lot of you longtime listeners have heard this repetitively, but it's not what you do that matters to your health. It's why you do it, right? So I can have women come to me and say, I just don't get it. I exercise every single day. And I eat, all natural foods. And it's all whole food based. And I'm eating plenty of protein and vegetables, which, by the way, that's never true. Whenever someone tells me that and we actually look at their food, I actually have them record their food. The story does not line up with what they think they're doing. However, even if a woman is doing what she thinks she's doing, I'm not interested in the what, I'm interested in the why. Why do you work out every day? And you know what I find is as I build trust with the client, it comes out they're not exercising every day because they love exercise and they really want and they love themselves so much that they want to care for themselves on the highest level. They're doing those things out of self-loathing and insecurity and people-pleasing. And health will never be born of that. So why you do what you do is equally, if not more important than what you're doing. And this again is addressing the difference between the tip of that iceberg and the real meat of the iceberg. I'm interested in the meat, the biggest part of that iceberg. So I've again talked about this many times on the podcast, but I love asking women to collect data about what they think they're doing, right? So if we're talking about their relationship with exercise, or we're talking about how much sleep they're getting, or how many hours they're working, or whatever the conversation is that they're rumbling with, I ask them to collect data. I want you to write down exactly what you did today with that specific thing. And why? Because data allows us to get really honest with ourselves. Data allows us to focus on the hard facts and get out of a space of being the victim of drama. My own business coach says this to me all the time. Courtney, data over drama. I'm not interested so much in the story right now. I'm interested in the numbers. Show me the data. And I'm telling you, it's such a powerful way to get very honest with yourself. And this is why I would argue a whole lot of women don't do it. We don't necessarily want to get honest with ourselves because we know what we are going to see behind the honesty is more work. And when we're tired and we're frustrated, more work just feels daunting. But I promise you this, when you are willing to collect data and when you're willing to really go in and get intimately and deeply honest with yourself, it's going to benefit your life in ways that you could never have predicted. And one of the things that I think is really important when we're going in and getting to know ourselves and being really truthful with ourselves about why we're doing what we're doing and collecting data about what we're doing, we have to apply curiosity over judgment. Curiosity invites solutions, right? And it invites education. It invites you to learn. But judgment doesn't do anything good for you. It just shuts you down. And one of my favorite things to remind my clients of is you cannot be curious and judgmental at the same time. So make sure before you go in and start getting honest with yourself, you really go in with an attitude of curiosity. And just to reiterate what I said earlier, I see a lot of women focusing on things that aren't really the problem, right? They hyper-focus on the food. They're hyper-focusing on the exercise. And please don't hear me say that those things don't matter to your health. Of course they do. And I have spent countless podcast episodes talking about the importance of chemical balance. But what's at the root of not really showing up to eat foods that nourish you or to move your body pretty consistently because that's what your body deserves? When you're struggling to show up for those things, what's at the root of it is not just the diet and exercise. It's not just that you need a better plan. It's that you need to improve your self-worth. Maybe you need to get better at time management and organizing yourself better. Maybe you need to redefine what failure means and what progress looks like. In other words, you got to get clear on why you do what you do. Why are you showing up to engage with things that are not in line with what you truly want. For example, right now, being, stay-at-home orders, I know a lot of people are eating foods that they normally wouldn't eat. They're drinking to manage their stress, right? We're indulging in these false pleasures to not feel something in the moment. We're compromising our sleep because we're trying to please other people. These are the things we need to get very honest about. These are the hard conversations. This is where the most powerful transformation starts to happen. When you think about relationships being misaligned, I mentioned earlier, when someone in the relationship is being a jerk, it doesn't go well. And ladies, a lot of you are having trouble realigning yourself because you're being a total ass to yourself. Anytime you mess up, anytime you're not perfect in your efforts, you're being very unkind, and I would say for a lot of you, even cruel. And I've worked with women long enough to believe that a lot of that stems from having a lack of self-respect. How you talk to yourself when you mess up, the kinds of things that you say to yourself, about your body, about your capabilities, has everything to do with the degree of self-respect you have for yourself. And again, like I said earlier, if your husband, your best friend, your kid came to you and talked to you the way that you talk to yourself a lot of the time, it would just get you further misaligned in that relationship. It wouldn't help you to improve and fortify the relationship. So you are going to mess up. Your progress will not be linear. Your efforts will not be perfect. Expect that. But if you practice gratitude for what is going well, you acknowledge your wins, you extend compassion to yourself when you slip up, I promise you, realignment will be so much easier. And a big part of this is managing the way you think about yourself, how you define your failures, what you expect from putting in a little bit of effort, right? All of this requires managing our thinking because our thinking drives our emotions, and your emotions either get you to show up for the things you want to be doing, or they prevent you from doing the things you want to be doing. So you must take responsibility for how you think so you can basically take responsibility for how you feel. And the way that you talk to yourself is a big part of that. And I will say that this is probably one of the biggest pieces of the work that I lean into heavily with my Rumble and Rise students. So Rumble and Rise, in case you don't know, is my membership site. It opens a couple times a year. And yes, of course, I help people to stay chemically aligned, but the membership site is so much bigger than that. We talk a lot about mindset, managing our thoughts and emotions so we can show up in our lives in the most powerful way, and we can take care of ourselves in a way that feels really in alignment with who we want to be in the world. And the biggest part of that work is managing your thoughts and emotions. The final thing that I just want to mention today is when you are misaligned and you are committed to finding where the relationship with yourself is a little bit misaligned, because there's always some place. It's kind of like any relationship, right? There's always a place we could do better. We could listen better. We could show up a little bit more frequently. We could look for more ways to support the other person. There's always ways to do better in relationships. And that's absolutely true of the relationship that you have with yourself. But if you aren't taking responsibility for your role in the relationship that you have with yourself, nothing's ever going to change. You're really going to struggle to realign yourself. You must take radical responsibility for your misalignment. And this is a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow because a lot of women will say, but it's not me. It's what's happening out in the world. It's my job. It's my husband. It's COVID. It's none of those things. The truth is, it's none of those things. And the thing I want to offer you here is this concept of neutrality. What's happening at work is neutral. COVID is neutral. Your body is neutral. Your failures are neutral. Okay, Courtney, what the heck does that mean? It means that those things have no meaning until you give them meaning. Your body is not good or bad until you have a thought about your body, and you have complete control over your thoughts. You can think your body is amazing and spectacular and supports you in the most remarkable ways, or you could focus on the idea that your body hates you and that you're never going to be able to be in a good relationship with it. So it's not your body that's causing you to feel anything. It's your thoughts about your body that cause you to have a lot of gratitude for it or cause you to wage a war with it. The same is true of your job. The same is true of the relationships in your life, right? And this is what I mean by radical responsibility. We have to take radical responsibility for our role in the misalignment because it is the only thing that you can ever control. You are the only thing you can ever control. You can't control COVID, but you can control how you show up in the midst of it. You can't control necessarily your body in all ways, but you absolutely can control how you show up to take care of it. You can control how you think about it. You can control how much you respect it. You can't control how other people act. You can't control what other people do, what other people say, but you can control how you think when people act a certain way towards you. You don't have to make it about you. You can make it about them. It doesn't have to mean the relationship is trash. It could mean this is an amazing opportunity to do some serious work on improving this relationship. So I love the reminder of neutrality, that everything outside of you is neutral until you have a thought about it. And that is your work. Thoughts are optional, and they are the most important work you will ever commit to when it comes to improving your health. And in this conversation, in terms of realigning yourself with your health. So really take some time and get to know how you're thinking, which means you got to carve out that time in your day. You've got to start listening, not just to your body, but to your thoughts. How do you do that? Start journaling. If something's bothering you in the day, put pen to page and just let yourself write completely uncensored for 3 to 5 minutes. And what's going to happen at the end of that 3 to 5 minutes is you're going to have a whole litany of thoughts on a piece of paper. And then you can start pulling apart those thoughts one by one. Are these thoughts useful to me? Are they helping me to feel the way I want to feel in order to show up to do the work that needs to be done here? And if the answer is no, awesome. You have some thought management work to do. And again, I'm not going to get into that here. I've done episodes on this. It's the crux of the work that I do with my clients. But just starting by becoming aware of how you're thinking about things is a really powerful way to realign yourself. So we're going to go deeper into this conversation next month. We're going to kind of go into this conversation of Health 2.0. And really, my intention is to help women to help the people of this community to really reimagine the health journey, because what we've been sold is not enough. It's not the real work. It's not enough to just focus on the diet and the exercise. And it also, me saying that, I don't want you to think, oh, it's going to, it's so hard. I don't want to do more work. But yes, you do. You want to do the real work. Because when you do the real work, you don't have to keep starting a new diet every month. You don't have to look for the latest and greatest exercise program. And best of all, you really start to like who you are because you are living in alignment with who you want to be in the world. And that's everything. And to me, that's really what health is all about. So I hope you'll join me next month. And just a reminder, again, if you need a little support with that chemical realignment piece, you can register for the 5-part video series, 5 to Thrive, by going to graceandgrit.com/5 to Thrive. And anyone and everyone is welcome to register for that for free and also join the Women of Grace and Grit Facebook community for free. I hope this was helpful. If it was, if you enjoy this episode, if you've enjoyed past episodes and you've never left a review, it does us a lot of good to get reviews. So if you're on, you can just leave a 5-star review, hopefully, for the podcast, and then write a few words about why you would recommend another woman listens to it. And I always say this, that if you're going to leave a review and you're going to leave me anything less than 5 stars, fine. I'm totally open to constructive criticism. But what's fascinating is people who leave me less than 5 stars never leave commentary. And that doesn't help me at all. So I'm totally open to constructive criticism. Please be kind in your criticism. But I need to know what would make it 5 stars, because it's the only way I can do better. It's that honesty piece, right? All right, my friends, I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much again for being here, and I hope to see you again next month. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Grace and Grit podcast. It is time to mend the fabric of the female health story, and it starts with you taking radical responsibility for your own self-care. You are worth the effort, and with a little grace and grit, anything is possible.